understand that we're going to start right now and not miss my introduction. Welcome to any of you that are watching online. Glad that you have joined us here also. It's all still just a little weird to me, but I'm getting over it. So as I was preparing this week, we've got this week and one more week to talk about marriage here, and then we'll do something different. But I was, just contemplating what of all the things that could be said, what would I say? And so I got stuck on this one deal. I went back and it's probably 12 years ago, maybe. I had somebody ask me this question. It was personal. It was from a friend. And basically they said to me, you and Wanda appear to be still really happy. And you've been married a long time. Why are you still married? Okay, and so it was, on the surface, that feels like a really awkward question. Why are you still married? Well, but the answer is not as, it doesn't flow as simply as asking the question. Because the reason that we are still together has a lot, there are a lot of reasons. And as they interact with each other, it sort of forms this whole reason. And so what I did is I went back and began writing out what at that time was a blog post for the series that I was doing on Marriage Tuesdays for nearly a decade. Just trying to write out everything that I thought and knew about marriage. And it was in that context that this list was formed. It was an answer, it was my answer to somebody's legit question, why are you still married? And I don't think that the cumulative total of reasons is horribly complicated, but there are things that I had not thought about. There were things that, until I was forced to answer that, I had not really put into words. And so I'm going to give you some of those reasons today. I made a change in my, I think I've said this before in some places. I've been doing pre-marriage counseling for couples for over 40 years. It is something that I like to do. It is certainly the best part of the process for me. I am not a real fan of standing up in the middle of somebody else's wedding and talking. That just, not my thing. But being able to have conversation with people prior to them getting married, to me, there maybe is no more important conversation that I have with people. And but I made a change. When I was really young in ministry, I went to counseling workshops. I went back to graduate school again, a second time, to study marriage and family counseling. I wanted to learn about it. I wanted to be helpful. And out of that came this young 30-year-old arrogance that I actually had something to tell somebody else about how to be married well. And so in my marriage counseling, what I learned to do was to tell people, here's how I do it. And I realized quickly in those early years, I was not being helpful to people at all, because nobody else was quite like us. And why would I suppose that somebody could be married like we are married? And so I had to back off of that, and so I have taken a different approach all through the years in pre-marriage counseling. But so today, when I'm going to give you some reasons why I think we have done okay in marriage throughout our lifetime. In the back of my mind, I feel like I'm standing up here going, okay, follow my example. That is not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying if you hear something in the midst of some of the things that I say today, and then again next week, I don't know if we'll finish this today. If you hear some things that you can say in your head, wow, that makes sense to me. Maybe that's an area we could work on, or maybe that's something we could apply, then I will feel like I have done a good job. If you go away from listening to what I'm saying today and say, we can never do that, you miss the point. Or if you go away going, okay, we are going to be like Mike and Wanda. Oh dear. Stay away from the low-hanging fruit, okay? And reach for something higher, all right? So with that in mind as the backdrop, I'm going to give you some lessons that we've learned along the way that maybe could be helpful to you. Okay, so here's the first one. These are really not in order of importance. These are just kind of the way they came to me. And the first one is one that I would assume all of you have done. And if you haven't, you probably should. And that is to draw a line in the sand. And by drawing a line in the sand, what I mean is, from the very beginning of our relationship, we stated to each other, we looked each other in the eyes and said, no matter what, divorce is not an option. Okay, it's interesting when I talk to married couples about that, and I will ask them in the midst of maybe some crisis they are going through and so forth, I will ask the question, have you, or is divorce an option for you? And they go, things are really bad right now. And that leads me to believe that they never looked each other in the eyes and said, this is not an option. No matter what happens, it is not an option. Wow. Now that is idealistic, don't you think? Because I think if I were hearing me say this to you, I'd be going, okay, if that happened, maybe it would have to be an option. Now, I will tell you with that said, and I'm not going to go any further on this, I think that the one deal breaker in all of that sort of renders that decision weak and ineffective, and that is if there is abuse in the okay? Then I think all things have to be on the table at that point in time. But anything short of that, I think that we can look at each other and go, by God's grace, we can get through this if we make a decision that says we take that off of the table. So here's the cool thing about that, is that commitment to each other does not have to be made prior to getting married. That commitment can be made at any point in your relationship, where you look at your spouse and you go, by the way, maybe we never said this 20 years ago, or maybe this never came out of our mouths when it should have, but I am stating to you on this day, from now on, this is what I want you to know from me. Those kinds of statements matter. They matter a lot. And this whole thing that we tend to do in marriage, where we say something to the effect, well, she knows I love her. The very fact that you would have to say that says to me, maybe she doesn't. One of the ways that people know that we love them is if we tell them that. If we show them that, and we point out, it is because of love, this is what I am doing. Because I love you, this is what is happening. There's great power in our words. There is great power in drawing lines in the sand and then saying, come here with me. Let's look down at the sand right now and see it together. Where we reaffirm those kinds of things. Just thinking in our own head, well, he knows. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe you ought to ask. Or remind them. Thank you, Gary. Okay, so this first one. Here's another one. And that is to decide on your motivation. The past 3 weeks, I brought up things that deal with our motivation to get married, to stay married, to define marriage, to have it get better in one way or the other. Well, this is the one where you have to just hear me out about our life and see where and how that could fit in with, if there's an application for your life. But at a really, really, really young age, we were taught and then came to believe and then have lived out the idea that our marriage was more about God's reputation than ours. Not that he needed us to bolster his reputation. God clearly does not need us. He doesn't need you, he doesn't need me. There is a role that we play in life, but knowing that and believing that when somebody looked at us, it mattered to us that they would get some kind of glimpse of who God is and how God functions by interacting with us. That mattered to us at an early age. It really, really did. Now, that's not just about marriage. That's pretty much everything that we do. We believe and we teach that there is a power greater than anything that we can muster up on our own who lives inside of us. If you believe that, if that is part of your faith orientation, that Jesus rose from the dead because he has power unlike any human being, and if you believe that on a particular day or a particular time in your life, Jesus came to set up residence inside of you, that his Holy Spirit lives inside of you, then you have to believe that the power of God, the power that raised Jesus from the dead, also lives in you and can raise even you from the dead, can raise your marriage from the dead. We've always believed that. Have we always felt that? I don't think so. We're as human as anybody else is. But this one kind of goes along with the drawing a line in the sand, is when you don't feel like you believe a particular truth, you go back to the line in the sand and you stare at it until you remember that you believe that. And that is about the power of God at work in our lives. I would say this. I can look in this room. I can't look online and know who is listening. But I can look at every single person in this room today and know that at some point in your life, You drew a line in the sand and said that Jesus is greater than anything that I will ever face in my life. You said that. The moment you were baptized publicly, you declared, I believe this stuff. Okay? Sometimes we just have to go back and remember what we believe. And then take that and apply it to our daily life. And so, for me and for Wanda, and I speak on her behalf, we had a little bit of a conversation about this last night. It didn't go well. And I think it was too late, really. But I know that I speak on her behalf when I say this, is that we each made those public declarations of our faith in Jesus years ago, and we circle back to them all the time because it is tied intimately to God's reputation. Our lives are tied to His reputation. And so, to the best of our ability, we're going to represent. We are going to represent. He did for us. That is the least we can do for Him. And it filters all the way down to our marriage. By the way, I know this is a little awkward because there are people that are watching online, and I know you don't really want to say things or whatever, but I am telling you that if I say something and you have a question, just kind of shoot your hand up and ask the question. Or if you have a comment, say it. And we'll do our best to get it or restate it online so that people can hear it. But I don't want to run past you. Okay, here's a third one. And that is that every decision and every choice we make matters. It's a basic lesson we try to teach to our children when they are growing up. That somehow when we get to be adults, it's like we are above that. We can do whatever we want. I'm free, I'm old, I'm an adult. I don't have to submit my decisions, my desires, my whatevers to anybody else necessarily. Now I do to my boss because if I do what I want to do in my occupation, they'll fire me and I'll lose my job. But in the realm of human relationships, it's as if we have been led to believe we can do anything that we want. I will tell you this. I think that, and you need to think through this because this one comes up in marriage counseling a lot. Wanda and I made a good decision when we chose each other early in life. For us, being together and being married, that was a good decision. Now, we didn't know that at the time. That's one of those things where we can look back in retrospect and go, yep, that was a good decision. There ain't anybody else that could ever live through life with either one of us the way that we have. I'm convinced of that. Here's the problem, though, is that I can tell you in the overwhelming majority of marriage counseling that I have done with people, not pre-marriage, but post-marriage counseling, the topic of, I think I made a mistake at some point in my life, comes up. I think I made a mistake. That's why you need to draw a line in the sand. Okay? Because what I would say back to you is, no, you didn't make a mistake. You got married. I've said that to couples and they go, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I made a mistake. No, you got married. That was not a mistake. Well, I picked the wrong person. I should have never gotten married to this person in the first place. And my calloused, judgmental counseling attitude comes out and says, sorry, let's work it out. You drew a line in the sand. Let's do this. I think for us, it was a little easier in that we were convinced early on we made a really good decision. And we built on that. But I want you to take away from that is never, ever underestimate the power of a bad decision. Ever. Now, can bad decisions be overcome? You bet. You bet. That's why we have this new group that's meeting next door on Monday nights called Overcomers. There's not a bad decision that cannot be overcome. It just makes it a little harder along the way. So before you make decisions, whether they are financial, whether they are location or job or children or fill in the blank, we pause and we go, is this really a good decision? Because let me tell you, living with a bunch of good decisions, one after another, is a lot more fun than having to back up the bus up and run over everybody again because you made a bad decision and then you're having to make up for it. Decisions matter. That mattered to us, and it's one of the reasons why I think we have some longevity in our marriage. This one may be the single most important one on the list, and it's easy for me to say at this point in my life, but I can say it because we lived it when we were younger, and that is that we need to listen. We need to listen carefully to the wisdom of those who have walked before us. Let's go ahead and change that one, Larry. Listen to the wisdom of those who have walked before us. I will tell you, this is sort of a commentary on a generation or multiple generations that I've lived through. 40 years ago, there was a completely and totally different attitude about younger people listening to the wisdom of older people. Now, you who are older in here, you may feel that already. You may go, yeah, my kids stopped listening to me when they were 4. You know, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about once you reach adulthood and then still continuing to learn from people who are older and hopefully wiser, that is a value that is not nearly as strong today as it was 40 years ago. Now that is my opinion. 30, 20 years ago, I had way more couples, younger couples, who would come to me or come to Wanda and I and go, we would really like your help. We would really like to hear what you have to say. Teach us some about being married. Now those are people now in their 40s. There are many who did that. I can tell you now, we don't have nearly as many people who want to sit down and talk and ask the question, how can we have a better marriage? Teach us something about what you've learned. What kind of mistakes did you guys make? You know, it doesn't happen the way that it used to. And I've got some ideas why I think that may be, but they really don't matter. When we were young, we listened intently to people that we admired and respected about marriage. We just did. And then we would listen to what they had to say, and we would go back and we would look at each other and go, well, this is discouraging. We're not doing anything like what they do. Maybe we should pay more attention. That can happen at any point in one's life. I don't think we ever stop learning. I don't think we ever stop having the ability to get deeper, grow deeper, have better marriages, and we can always do that. We have both read a ton of books on marriage. Every now and then I don't read as many anymore as I used to when I was younger. And we will be sitting in our beloved love seat recliner. I talk about that in our living room. And Wanda will go, "Here, let me read you something about marriage that I just read." Really, you're still reading stuff about marriage? Yeah. I just learned something. Let me pass this on to you. It's what we do. A book will show up. I'll see it on the shelf, or I'll order one. Think, I need to read this. I need to sharpen my skills. I need to learn more about marriage. Is there something that I've forgotten? We read a lot. I get this. We don't value reading the way we used to in our culture. It's pretty funny. I haven't done it now for, since COVID, but we would do the men's 42 days. It's always my favorite time of the year when we do men's 42 days, because I assign a book to read, and most all of them go, really? We need to read a book? Yeah, it's like I picked one with pictures, and it's really small, and I've pre-highlighted it for you. We're busy. We get home from work. We don't want to read another book. We don't want to do anything. I'm just telling you, you got to decide what's most important. You got to decide. We read books about marriage by people that are smarter than we are. Try to learn from them. In our first 5 years of marriage, and then subsequently for years afterwards, but our first 5 years, when it was it was a little rough. It was a little rough in our first 5 years. And we submitted ourselves to the accountability of other couples. They knew we weren't doing well, and we got invited into a circle where we had to be honest, we had to talk about it, and we had to grow. Again, that can be done at any point in one's life if you want to have something different than what you got.
What's your favorite marriage book? What's your favorite marriage book?
My favorite marriage book is not a marriage book at all. Not on marriage, but the one that taught me the most about being a husband and a father is a book that's called What Kids Need Most in a Dad. And I sort of extrapolate. That is by a guy named Tim Hansel. It's out of print now, but you can still find them. Pre-underlined, by the way. That's the greatness of Amazon used books. You can just go right away to the yellow highlighted part that somebody else said was important. Speeds up your reading. But that book is without a doubt the most influential on being a husband and being a dad. So, for women, you could ask Wanda. I don't know. Here's another one. And this one, you'll moan at this one. You need to make some goals and write them down. If I were to ask you this question, do you have any goals for your marriage? Right now, do you have some concrete goals for your marriage? Most people would say, sort of. Yeah. Stay married. It's the number one goal. That's not a goal. Okay? We have lost the art of goal setting. We don't do much of that anymore. Partly because we're beat over the head in our companies and businesses that we work in that want us to submit yearly goals. And you don't have those?
No, I don't do them because I hate them.
Okay, Aaron, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't do them because I hate them. So well stated. So my guess is you and Chris don't sit around at night around that campfire and go, let's bring out our goal sheet and evaluate how we've done.
Huh?
We burn it in the fire.
Burn it in the fire. Okay, kindling. Good. Look, I am not, there's not a single one of these that I'm going to give you that you're going to go, oh gee, I never thought of that. Okay? This is not rocket science. But it is remembrance. I really could care less about your business. I don't care much about your personal finances or your career development plan or whatever it is that you happen to be on. I do care about your marriage right now. And I will tell you that if you don't have a plan to get somewhere, you'll never get there. The detailing of some kind of a plan is instrumental in anything that's important. And we were not taught, most of us were not taught to do that about marriage. You just get married, you have kids, you buy a house, you pay for it, you get old, you die. There you go, there's the marriage goal. And for most people, it doesn't get a lot more complicated than that. And I just think, how sad. You're going to spend all of these years next to this person. All of these years. There's more. But there really won't be more if you don't look each other in the eyes and articulate, what does more look like? What does more feel like? What do we want? Do we want more out of our marriage? What is it that we want? And then you get to dream and you get to make it up as you go. You don't have to have our goals. I don't have them pre-printed to pass them out and go, here are the 10 goals of marriage. It doesn't work that way. You make your own. You write them down. We made some goals for ourselves early on in our marriage. Made goals as parents. I can go back and look at them. I keep them. They're kind of buried in my computer now. They're not on paper anymore like they used to be. But I have a list of goals for each one of my boys. I have goals for myself as a person. I have goals for myself as a follower of Jesus. I have goals for our marriage that we wrote down and we worked on them to try to get there. And I tell you, there's never too late to look at each other and go, let's make some goals for the rest of the time that we have together. And then when you have goals, then you can write down some ways to reach those goals. How are we going to get there? What has to happen? What has to happen financially? What has to happen personally, professionally? How do we get to where we're going? It's been invaluable to us. Next one. It's kind of funny. I could say this next one and the next one after that and then are all the most important ones. I'll stop that. They're all important. Own it. At a really young age, we each, independently of each other, took ownership of our personal discipleship to Jesus. My theology, I've shared it at various times throughout the years here, and I know there is a competing theology that exists out in the greater Christian world that I don't adhere to. The one that I adhere to in my understanding of Scripture is I don't have any responsibility for Wanda's life with Jesus. That's hers. It's on her. The idea of me being the head of our marriage, I don't believe has anything to do with me being responsible for anything in her life spiritually. She is going to have to stand before God on her own by herself. She is not going to be able to go, what he said. She stands alone before God. We all do. Every one of us. I can't make Wanda study her Bible. She can't make me study my Bible. She could nag. I could nag. I could make her sit down so I could talk to her about her spiritual condition. That ain't going to happen. More than likely, she's going to talk to me about mine. We stand before God alone. We believe that. Therefore, we've got to be responsible for our own. We're responsible for our own studying of the Bible. We're responsible for our own friendships. We are responsible for our own theology. We are. And it's pretty funny. I mean, I've said this a number of times through the years here. We're close theologically. Close. But we don't parrot each other. We don't share the same views on some really important things. And those discussions will end up with her going, "You're crazy," and I say, "You're nuts." And I'll then say, "Pass the remote," and then we're back to being happily married again. You know, that's kind of how it goes. But she's responsible to God for her theology. Now, she can ask me questions. I can ask her questions. I can tell you this. Her teaching of me throughout the years has been invaluable. I have learned immensely from Wanda's understanding of the Bible because she took her personal discipleship seriously. That makes for a good partnership. So own your spiritual life. Own it. The deeper and stronger you are, the better your marriage can be. Now, I wouldn't say that to everybody just walking on the street. I'm talking about people who have an orientation to God. Own it. Okay, here's something practical that helped us along the way. And that is do something really, really important together. In a world of immense need, people hurting everywhere, the two of you need to find something that you will do important for somebody else. And when that one is done, pick another one. And when that one is done, pick another one. The reason why I say that is so important is because that is the only cure, the only practical, physical cure for selfishness that I know of, is don't be selfish. Don't read a book, How to Be Unselfish. Don't read a marriage book, okay? Read a sports book. You don't need to read a book on how not to be selfish. The best way to learn not to be selfish is to do something really, really, really important for somebody else and do it together. And create inside of your union a joy in serving, where you find that. It will be completely and totally life-changing. We had a fairly easy path when we were young because our relationship started right at the very beginning doing youth ministry together. And so our lives were dominated by serving young people. So yeah, I get it. It was a little easier for us in that way. But it doesn't have to be something that dramatic. You don't have to change occupation. You don't have to change trajectory in your life. You just need to find some people that need your help and do it together. It could be your next door neighbors. It could be through an agency. You want to, call us up, call Allison up, call me up. We've got plenty of places where you could serve together. Now that doesn't have to be a complete life change. It could just be something in the moment. It could be based around the holidays. It could be anything. But I have no doubt that serving side by side shaped us and helped us be married. It was not always easy. Next one. You may not realize this, but you know this about Wanda. Wanda is a really, really, really fun person. I have been accused of being too serious or intimidating or those other things about me. My recommendation is you need to have more fun in your marriage. I can count on one hand the couples that I know who I want to say to them, well, slow down. You guys got to get a little serious about your life because you are like one big party all the time. I've got maybe 3 or 4 of those people around. The rest of us, way too serious. You need to put fun in your life regularly. What do you enjoy doing? Do that more. Do more of it. Find joy in doing things together that make you laugh with each other and at each other. I am a huge proponent of laughing at each other. Okay, that is not a negative. If your little feelings get hurt because you do something and your spouse laughs at what you have done, you need to grow thicker skin. Being able to laugh at each other, the mistakes that we make, is a gift from God. It needs to be cultivated. I'm going to end with this one, then Buzzy's going to come up. It kind of ties together with owning it, and that is, you are both leaders. So lead. And you can go, I am not a leader. In your marriage, you are both leaders. And what I mean by that is, each one of you are gifted in particular ways that the other one is not. Stop doing the things that your spouse is gifted at doing. Let them do that. Do the things God has gifted you to do, and let them take the lead on the things that they are gifted at doing. Without a doubt, that has been a rock in our marriage, that there are a list of things that Wanda does in our marriage that she does all on her own, and she will go, I want you to know what I've done. I don't need to know what you've done. That's your area. Do it. And there are things that happen in our life that I do likewise. This whole thing of having prescribed roles in a marriage where the man is always supposed to do these things and the wife is always supposed to do these things, I would like to encourage you to rethink that theology. I'm not going to spend any more time on it. I would prefer to live in the realm of God has gifted all of us in unique and special ways. You can come up. You're on camera, I get it. But make sure you are doing what God has gifted you to do. Life and marriage works a whole lot better when it happens. Okay. There will be the rest of the list next week, then we'll wrap this up. I hope you are here for that. And at the end of that, I'm going to send anybody who wants, there are notes to this, all the things that I've said. And hopefully it'll be helpful to you. So that's it. We're going to sing just a little bit and go from there.